Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, it's nice to have you back from the dentist.
Yeah. I had to go 2 days in a row. So, you know me and dental or doctor or any of that. I'm highly opposed to it.
Um,
Thank,
Twice in a row.
yeah, 2 days. Yeah. Thankful
Yikes.
for it and hate it all the same.
Well, I'm glad to have you back because it was lonely. Even though I was with the vet, it was lonely. So I'm so glad to have you back.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk to Janelle Batts. Janelle and her husband Kevin have been mainstays in Oklahoma for several years, although they're from Texas, and we'll give them a pass on
Me too.
that.
Me too.
Oh, that's right, you are too. Dang it,
Yeah.
you you Texans taking over Oklahoma. Look
Yeah.
'em horns.
Well, when in
Um,
Rome.
hey. Um, so Janelle and her husband have been doing they have been doing television production here in the state and have been doing a really wonderful job. And they have a new project that they're undertaking. And so we're going to bring on Janelle and talk to her a little bit about what she does and what their organization does and what's they've been doing and what's coming up new for them. So I'm going to bring on Janelle and say, good morning, Janelle.
Good morning, ladies.
We are
How are
so
you?
on. So glad to have you.
Doing well. Glad to join the two troublemakers of Oklahoma this morning. So
We all have to.
Oh, goodness.
There's a picture of your lovely husband there on our opening slide.
yes,
And you work with your husband.
I do. I get a lot of questions about that. People are always like, "How does that work? Do you guys get along? Do you fight a lot?" And I always say that we work really well together now, but it wasn't always like that. It definitely was a huge challenge in the beginning. Lots of humility, lots of respect that has to be given, and knowing when to let each other use your strength when the other one's got a weakness, and vice versa. But once you get into the knack of it, you really work well as a team. And I think that God's really blessed us with that ability to be able to work together. So very thankful.
Well, having seen you work together, I can tell that yes, he has.
Yes. And I would just like to point out that we are technically originally from Oklahoma. We are Texas transplants, though. I call us Texas transplants, but grew up in rural Oklahoma, but lived in Texas for 12 years. So technically, I mean, yeah, we still have to have a pass, probably.
So where were you in Texas?
All over. We lived in Central Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for a while. We lived in Midland, Texas. We lived in South Texas, Corpus Christi, Port A. We lived in all of those areas. And I have to say my favorite was probably South Texas.
Yeah.
Having the beach and being able to take our kids to the beach every week. And it was nice. But it's been good being back in Oklahoma. We're near my family, and my kids get to be around their aunts and their uncle and their Gigi. And we've been able to reconnect with people and connect with people like you guys, even though, Jenny, I feel like we still have somewhat long history, even though we connected even before we moved back some years back. So interesting that we've been able to continue to cultivate that relationship. And then, of course, Julia, just all of the work that you guys have done has been amazing. So it's been awesome to be connected to you guys.
Well, I have to say, without going into our deep history, you and your husband were there for me when I had a really terrible time. I wrote an article for the Federalist, and it just really, I think that's the only time I've ever kind of had a fear of, being injured or I mean, it was, and you guys were so instrumental in making me feel like I was not going to die and people weren't going to kill me.
And it was rough. I mean, people really went after you for speaking truth. Went after your whole family for that one. And you definitely, it's like I tell people all the time. It's like you always hit a nerve when people respond that intensely. I mean, the response that came. So you're an excellent writer. So you don't hold back, which is what people don't like. So
well, and so are you. So I take that as a very good compliment coming from another excellent writer. So start telling me about Red River Media, because Red River Media was the very first, right?
Yes. So, well, Red River, I guess kind of how it went. It's technically, I guess, always been Red River Media. It started as Red River Chronicle because we just started writing. That's really how it started. We weren't doing any videos. We weren't doing any type of really online content at all, to be perfectly honest. We were just writing articles and publishing them to our own website. It kind of started with our own individual reporting, individual different things that we were doing. And then it kind of morphed over the years. More and more things were changed and got added. And it was kind of cool watching how that happened. We went on to do video after that a couple of years later. And what was interesting was being like from Oklahoma, we were writing about a lot of Oklahoma issues that were going on, but we were writing while living in Texas. So that was always triggering for some people because they didn't understand like where, who are you people and where did you come from? And we didn't have like some big following back then. We had like there was no base as far as people who were, reading our things. Mind you, there were certain things that were written that did get people's attention, but again, no one really knew who we were, at that point, and still even really don't today. But it was always triggering being from, living in Texas and writing about Oklahoma issues. So moving back has been really cool, but it kind of morphed into Red River TV. And then we were just doing video content. And then recently we decided that we were going to forego that portion of what we do and just focus on doing documentary work and working with whistleblowers, working with people with sensitive information, people that have really tragic stories of injustice, activists, people who are looking for their parental rights. So it's been good. I think we did have some people that were more or less confused as to why we stopped doing the daily content. And to be honest, when you're already working, husband works a full-time job, we have 3 kids, it was a lot. It was a lot to do. And we didn't feel that maybe some of the results were outweighing the time that we were putting into it. And we felt like it was time to make a little bit of a change. And we're glad that we did that, though. We've really been able to focus on the documentaries, and all of them have been Oklahoma-based so far, which we're super excited about. So I feel like that, in a way, we're able to tell the stories of Oklahomans now.
Right.
It's been really cool.
Well, I watched the documentary on the Woolley family, and that was so well done. And jaw-dropping, and I'm so glad you did that, because people need to know what is going on with good people of Oklahoma. It's not somewhere out there that people are being mistreated by our government. It's right here. It's our neighbors.
Absolutely.
Good people of Oklahoma that are being mistreated.
Yeah.
And that poor child that has been gone from his parents as long as he's been with his parents now. That is just breathtaking.
Well, that being said, let's jump into let's jump into this a little bit. This is just a trailer, not just. It is a trailer for your movie, Saving Clayton. And I'm going to go ahead, and this is just a 2-something minute trailer, but I'd like everybody to see kind of, where this is going. And then you can tell us a little bit about it after we see that. So
Sure.
Best gift I've ever received in my life is the foundation that I had in my upbringing.
My parents used that property for us as a family and for the church. They really wanted it to be a place of fellowship.
They totally kidnapped him out of our family, out of his whole support system, and put him in foster care. And they were accusing us of things that didn't happen.
This couple is behind bars tonight, accused of sexually abusing a 5-year-old, also under investigation in the death of a 1-year-old.
Bill and Lisa Woolley were booked into the Wagner County Jail here on felony sexual assault charges after the investigation into the death of a 14-month-old living in their custody.
We're not able to come up with a reason why a 14-month-old baby died unexpectedly.
You always hear people talk about, well, there's SIDS. Okay, the SIDS doesn't actually exist.
They were denied any due process at all.
The whole attitude with the detective was that I was the devil incarnate and the evilest person in the world.
Lead investigator, before he even got there, he had made the comment that he was on his way to a murder scene.
How big could this investigation be if they didn't talk to any of the people that cared for the child?
They charged originally with child abuse. They couldn't make that stick. So then they brought first-degree murder and child abuse, and they couldn't make that stick.
You probably didn't know, but the medical examiner's office, who you're speaking so highly of, they lost their accreditation 13 years ago.
Somebody that the prosecution, state has used time and again to support their cases. When he comes forward and says, hey, this couple did nothing wrong, why don't they believe their own expert?
Clayton was taken the day after Elijah had passed. I feel like my life just stopped there. All I want to do is see my son. That's what I've been fighting for this whole time, is to see my son.
Obviously, like, we've been completely financially wrecked, mentally wrecked, emotionally wrecked.
I'm so grateful that I decided to live and not die, because I feel like I've been given my life back.
I have just been amazed at how something like that could happen in the United States of America.
I'm not going anywhere. I've got a grandson to fight for.
okay, well, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, then I'm afraid you might not be human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. We're actually playing YouTube there. Sorry. That was amazing. Can you just launch and tell us about that documentary?
Sure. One of the things that people often ask us, well, how did you end up getting involved? And to be honest, living in Oklahoma, we didn't know anything about this story. And when I heard about it, when my husband and I both heard about it, I remember being really shocked that we hadn't heard about the allegations against them. Well, what was interesting is that a lot of people seemed to know the allegations against them, but didn't know the whole story. And so the more that we dug into it, the more we were like, there's no way this is true. Like, there's no way that this happened the way that it did. Like, this is like negligence, really, is what it looked like.
Wonder what you're missing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the more we dug into it, the more we started to realize that, wait a minute, like, this really did happen this way. And this family hasn't seen their grandson, their nephew, for over 5 years, have had no contact. And so the more that we looked into it, it was incredibly fantastical. I mean, it was like there's all kinds of, weird coincidences and all these different things. And so, my husband was the main one that decided in that moment that he was like, I think that there's a story here that we need to tell, because it wasn't just about Clayton. That's what the fight is about right now. But the fight, though, is also over, Bill and Lisa Woolley, were they given due process? Were they allowed to be treated as innocent before being proven guilty? And that is not what they experienced at all. That is not the process that they experienced at all. There's something wrong when a sheriff can stand up publicly on camera and tell the public, we know someone in that house killed that baby. And meanwhile, the Woolies had not even been investigated yet. There wasn't a full, like, no conclusions. They had come to no conclusions about whether or not Bill was involved in this or Lisa was involved in this. And I believe that he did this 2 different times. And you're planting a huge seed of doubt in the minds of the constituency when you're not allowing the couple to prove their innocence at all, or at least you prove their guilt. And so there was so many different aspects of this story that, again, it was so it was unbelievable, in my opinion, when we looked into it. So not just about Clayton, but also about the fact that you have a family that literally has nothing left. I mean, they don't no ability to work, no ability to get a job, no ability to make money. They've spent well over, probably close to $1 million at this point trying to defend themselves just during the criminal case alone. And they are now still fighting for their grandson. And this all happened, as you stated, Julia, this has all happened right here in our backyard. This wasn't California. Like, this wasn't, Oregon. This wasn't New Jersey. Like, this was right here in Oklahoma. So when a lot of people hear this story, they always stop and go, wait a minute, this happened in Broken Arrow? Like, this happened right down the street? There are people that were living in the Tulsa area that told us that they had never even heard of this couple. And they just lived right there. And they had no idea what had happened. So it was pretty interesting.
And I saw 16 failed prosecutions later. So they've been through this 16 different pops on their good name.
Yes.
And
it's hard to come back from that.
Well, and when the sheriff was proven wrong, he should have repented and said, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh.
It's like one thing that Bill always says is that he said, well, when they arrested us and they brought these charges against us, he said it was very loud. It was like a boom in the media.
Yeah.
But whenever the charges were being dropped and being lowered, and finally there was nothing to go on at that point, he said there was no media.
Right.
That even was even talking about it.
Right.
But at one point in time when you and I were talking, I think you and I and your husband and I were talking, one of the reasons you told me that you guys talked about the reason why you started Red River TV was exactly for the reason that you're just now bringing to light. I mean, we have a media who's more engaged. Well, they're all bought off anyway, by other corporations that are in turn bought off themselves. But it's all about, Glenn Henley and I probably wouldn't have, the same politics, but when he made that song Dirty Money, that's really what it's about. It's about getting a bang so that they can make money from their advertisers and say, because unfortunately we're all humans and we're fallen. And, it's like every traffic stops when there's an accident, right? Because everybody's, it's just something weird that human beings have. And so media capitalizes on that and want to get the most disgusting stories available because the rest of us are going, did you see that?
Exactly.
And it doesn't make the same money for them to go, and the Woolley family were, and you talk about it. It's just sad.
Yeah, because that follows them this reputation of being accused of raping and murdering your own grandchild is one of the most heinous things that could possibly happen to you. It's a heinous crime. You're having to live under that stigma now.
And nothing happens to the sheriff that accused them of that.
Yes, everyone that was involved in the prosecution, everyone that was involved in the investigation, they're all still in their positions. Nothing's happened there. Everyone's still going. From what we've been told by the DA is that, well, we know that they're guilty, but we can't prove it yet. We haven't been able to prove it yet. So
How does that?
Yeah, that's what we said. We were like, well, seems like they may be innocent, if we're still having to find things. One of the questions that we often get from people is, well, weren't you scared of doing this story because wonder if they're guilty? And that was a good question, that we got from people, well, I wouldn't want to touch this because wonder if they really did this. And this is what I always tell people. I say, well, I am not an expert in human behavior. I'm not an expert in child molestation, child sex crimes. I'm not an expert there. But I will say that the research that I have done over the past 10, 11 years, when it comes to people that have been involved, that have been molested as children, that have been raped as children, et cetera, predators, is that if I'm a person that actually raped and murdered my own grandson, I wouldn't have the time to raise 3 children perfectly normal.
Right.
And skip a whole generation, not molest them, not rape them, raise them up to be upstanding human beings, a professional rugby player, a teacher, these different things. And then turn around and just decide that, I'm just going to rape and murder my grandson. Yeah. And better yet, I wouldn't be the kind of person that would do that, seem to get away with it because they can't bring any more charges against me, and then remain in the city, the county, the house, the state, where this happened to me, and continue to put my face in the media every single day, knowing they could come and arrest me at any time. They could come and arrest me at any time. So,
well, as a journalist, and I'm just curious. One of the things that I feel like as a journalist is that people stopped asking questions a long time ago. And you saw that, as far as I'm concerned anyway, in a huge way during COVID. Yes, I will put on my mask. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared of this illness. I mean, everybody just turned into a bunch of robots and did whatever. Where were the questions being asked? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? It's like, for some reason, we've been somehow trained by society to like everything that's the worst possible and be scared of everything that's out there without asking any questions about any of it.
Absolutely. And I think it's like we've been trained, the American people's minds have been conditioned to just adhere, comply, and go along. And we've seen that in a lot of different areas. I mean, you guys have talked about this as well, even with parental rights. We're seeing it in education. We're seeing it medically. You're seeing it where you have these seats of authority that we've always known, in the American way that we think that, okay, well, this person's in this position of authority, therefore they are right. Therefore, what they are doing is righteous. Therefore, what they are doing is pretty much gospel, and we don't question it. We don't ask any questions. We don't do anything. You've seen that happen. I brought this up as an example to someone recently. We were talking about parental rights, and they brought up, well, do you think there's a comparison with what happened with COVID? And I said, absolutely, because with COVID, it was like, okay, doctors and science are God. You don't question it. You do not push back against it, even if you have something in your gut that's telling you whether it's corporate or personal. It could be a relationship with your doctor that you have. It could be corporate.
And the doctors and scientists were contradicting themselves.
Exactly.
That's what was like. They just said the opposite, and now they're
exactly. There was cause for pause. Like there was a cause to pause there and go, well, I'm not sure what I should be doing here. But what they did was that they so connected that stigma of, we're doctors. We know better than everybody else. We're not bought and paid for. The medical industrial complex is not bought and paid for, right? So if you question me, we're going to shame you. And that's exactly what they did. They did the exact, they're doing it now with teachers. Right. You do not go against teachers. Mind you, all of these people are pillars of our communities. They absolutely are. I know I have friends that are teachers. They're amazing teachers. You guys know people that are teachers. They're amazing. We know doctors that are amazing. We know people in these different positions that are amazing human beings. But the problem is that if you go up against these authority figures, now you're being shamed into, you probably need to just go and sit down and shut up because you don't really know what you're talking about. So it forces people to want to sit down, shut down, not question anything, not question law, not question if the law's even being, enforced correctly. Yeah, exactly. So I think that they've used that model across, a lot of places in society now to get people to just become disengaged and not be a part of the process at all. And hey, we'll take care of your health. We have control over your health. We have control over your kids. We have control over due process. You just sit down and just go be over there. And it's really taken the voice of Americans, in my opinion, personally.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, but again, I think we've let them.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
that I think is the worst part about it. Our organization filed a lawsuit on behalf of a Stillwater dad who went to speak about the bathroom situation at Stillwater Public Schools, and he used scripture, and the Stillwater police manhandled him off the podium and took him out. And that was a clear violation of his First Amendment. I don't know how you get a clearer violation of your First Amendment right.
Absolutely.
And so we filed a lawsuit, and the very first judge basically found for the school. And we found out later on that the particular judge who did not run again for his position. And that's another thing. Hello, people. Do you understand that judges are elected?
Mm-hmm.
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not run again, but he was literally had done this kind of thing so many times that the way I understand it, and this is hearsay, but the way I understand it was that some attorneys basically went to him and said, you need to resign, because he literally was in the school's back pocket. He was, and we seem to think that judges aren't susceptible to injustice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a lie. We're all human. We are. And I think the best thing that we could possibly do as Americans today is knock everybody off their pedestal, whether it's legislator, policeman, sheriff, judge, attorney, knock them all off their pedestals and deal with them as individuals.
Absolutely. And I think too, I know we've talked about this before, but I think that it's one of those things where people are even doing this too with political parties. And it's like, we're not even allowed, you know what I mean? Like, we're not even allowed to question people because of their political parties. And I'm thinking, okay, last time I checked, I'm pretty sure that at the end of the day, it's still going to be the people versus government every single time. Well, and so it's that place where, why are we only questioning people when it's a certain political party, but we don't actually hold our own to a higher standard and say, hey, I'm not saying that I dislike you, but I'm saying that there are policies that you are putting in place that I personally don't believe is going to enhance my freedoms at all. And I'm wondering why I voted for you or why we voted for you. And we have the power to not vote for you again and, get you to leave. I don't know.
As a member of ROPE back in 2010, we had barely walked out of the victory party for all the Republicans getting elected. But like day 2, we were going to battle with all the Republicans that had just been elected over Common Core. That was like,
sounds about right.
So it's like that's the day I got over political parties.
Yes.
Like, we're fighting the Republicans, so don't.
But most of our fight as well. Even with this story, and again, I'm not trying to. We always bring this up. We didn't make the documentary to attack the sheriff or to attack the detective or to attack the DA. That's not why we created it. They happen to be a part of the story because these were all the players that were involved.
Right.
But
I want to say something about that. So Julia and I went to a meeting, a GOP meeting, and you guys it was in the southern part of the state. and you guys had shown a movie at one of their events, and their elected, was it DA? Oh, it was their elected DA, wasn't it, Julia, who got so angry? Their elected DA had to stand up and say, I just wanted to complain about the fact that this movie was shown at this event because that just put us all in a bad light. I wanted to stand up and go, no, your proper response is to say, thank you so much for showing that movie. It is true that in any profession, we can have bad actors, and it's so important for people to be able to see that that can happen, and for us to be able to, to deal with that when we find it. Thank you so much for your efforts. That should have been the correct response. But the correct response was whining and crying from the elected officials and the sheriff and the DA in that county who wanted to complain about that. Okay, look, guys, you have a tough job. Hands down, that's a tough job. But you can't be supported when you in turn do the wrong thing. And if you don't get that, you don't need to be in office.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. It's cut and dry. And that's one of the things that we would see in the showing of this documentary, was that we even had churches that did not want to get involved, and later found out that really the main reason is because they didn't want to be seen as going against Republicans. And we were like, well, the last time that I checked, abuse of power or corruption, whatever you want to call it, I would call it abuse of power in this situation. Last time I checked, that is not that's not a political issue. Corruption, abuse of power, these type of injustices affect anybody and everybody, regardless of their political affiliation. No one's standing up like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to, personally attack these people because they're, this color or this way. That can happen, but that's not what happened in this situation. And it's not what's happened with other stories that have come to the surface now, where the same players were involved. And so we thought that was interesting, that people were choosing to not let the story be shown or heard because they didn't want to look like they were going against law enforcement, and they were going against, because these men are Republican and we don't want to look like we're going against them. And we were gracious, and we were like, okay, you are allowed to have your own, thoughts and feelings on that. That's perfectly fine. But when an entire family has been completely brutalized by a system that they trusted, I do believe that at some point you've got to begin to want answers. And as a sheriff or as a detective or as a DA, maybe in a neighboring city or a neighboring county or whatever, should be able to stand up, like you said, and say, hey, this makes us as a DA look bad, but it needs to be shown because we need to get rid of the bad actors. Right. Like, I want this to be seen because I don't want it to reflect. Yeah, exactly. I don't want this to reflect law enforcement. This is not who we are. I don't want DAs to be reflected this way. I don't want detectives to be reflected this way. I want my constituents to trust me. I want my constituents to have open communication with me. I want them to, I believe in due process. None of those things were being said. Yep. It was a polar opposite. We had people that heard the story, watched the documentary, and were like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And after one meeting with certain players in this documentary, they had, within a day, they had completely changed their minds and decided that the Woolies were guilty again. It was amazing. It's amazing the experiences that we've had through this, that what people are willing to turn their eyes away from and pretend that that's not happening. Yeah. And I will say this, I believe that in our state, very much so, you have a lot of people that are in these certain departments, such as the DA. They're going to cover each other's back. Yep. When it comes to a lot of
here's the.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about that the most, and this seems like common sense, but I think all of us here know that common sense isn't common anymore. But it seems like common sense that you think of how the police have been attacked in the last number of years. Well, part of that is just, communist propaganda for sure. But the other part of it is you have bad actors in police, people who are authoritarian, people who like to use force. They gravitate toward those positions.
Absolutely.
And if they can use that in good faith and within the circle of law, then that's great. Some of them can't. And what hurts the police and any law enforcement more than anything in the world is what Julia said just a second ago. We're going to stand up for each other and we have to be there for each other. No, you don't. Because that's what ends up getting you in the end, is that you stick up for people that don't deserve to be stuck up for, and you allow them to perpetuate in the system. And then you wonder why people hate police, because there are police out there brutalizing people and you turn a blind eye.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that pretty much sums it up right there. And I think that, that's been one of the things that I've been wanting to bring attention to with this documentary. Like I said, people often, they do focus on Clayton, which they should, because that's the ongoing battle. But it's also, though, bringing people's attention back to the fact that, but what happened here was just, I mean, it was negligence. It was horrible the way this entire investigation was conducted. I mean, people that listen to the story and here's the thing, the documentary it was just the tip of the iceberg of the whole story.
Right.
When the Woolley family begins to fill in all of the other details, it's even more insane. When you begin to see how they came to the conclusions that they did, all the way down to the autopsy, all the way down to, the medical terms used, all these different things. But what gets me about this is that why is there, people are not super focused on the fact that how did this investigation end up going the way that it went? And why was there no attention being brought to that as to this could happen to any of us? Number one, if SIDS doesn't exist, I'm a grandparent, maybe I'll go to jail. I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, if things exist based upon, if a detective can show up, having not ever been to my home or investigated me, and he's saying that I'm on my way to, go and investigate a murder, and you've not been to my home before, and you don't even know what's going on. Like, needs to get the constituents thinking, if I'm living in that county, what can happen to me? You know what I mean? Am I going to be given due process? Am I going to be arrested? Am I going to have my children taken away, my grandchildren taken away? And yes, there have been other people that live in that same county that have gone through similar encounters exactly like the Woolleys by the same people. And I don't call that a coincidence. You know what I mean? When you've got the same players that are also harassing the same, people that don't even know each other in the same county and having children taken away and these different things happening. So I think that it's kind of twofold. The story is definitely twofold, because you've got the fight with DHS, but then you've got the issue of what kind of due process do I have in the state of Oklahoma, in this little bitty county that maybe no one's even heard of. But that was what the Woolleys experienced. And
DHS it's just a bureaucracy.
Exactly.
And they are currently ignoring all the facts that we have up to now. They're ignoring it and keeping that child from their family now.
Absolutely. And we know, as you guys know, I mean, DHS, they're one of the most protected government agencies in this entire nation. And so a lot of people too, we had people say, well, I don't understand why lawmakers didn't jump on this. Now, it's not to say that we didn't have some lawmakers that, have jumped in and said, hey, let us help. We have. But a lot of them, they'll just tell you point blank, like, look, we're not barking up that tree. You don't want to bark up that tree. You're not going to win. You're going up against DHS. I'm not going to go up against DHS.
But see, isn't that funny? They say the same thing about education, which is why nothing ever happens to education too. I'm not going to touch those people. They'll come after me.
Yeah. And it's like,
what are you there for?
That's why librarians that are putting pornography in their school libraries are not being arrested.
Exactly. So you've got lawmakers that don't want to go up against anything. I'm thinking, well, yeah.
Lawmakers and law enforcement officers. So.
Exactly. We're still depending upon a government that really has no intentions of fighting for the constituents here, and we're still depending upon them to somehow give us a voice, which is why people like you guys exist, because it's like someone has to keep the constituents of Oklahoma not only informed on what's going on in their own state, but to also keep them reminded of what rights that they actually have as individuals. That's been one of the biggest things that I've learned in the 12 years that I've been in media, is that most Americans, they don't know what rights that they have, and they don't know how to use them.
No. Amen.
The phrase with liberty and justice for all is just talking points.
Exactly.
It's not real.
Exactly.
Well, it's been perverted.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at, I love to say this because it makes so many people angry. I was in DC on January 6th.
She got fired from her mayor's job for that.
Hey. But I'll still keep saying it.
Right.
But I think the thing, I'll be honest here. I did not realize, I knew America was bad off, and I knew Oklahoma was way worse than most people who love to say, oh, but we're a red Bible Belt state, and you're like, yeah, well, back in the 50s.
Yeah.
So, we knew that, and I knew that, but boy, I'll tell you, after January 6th, everything changed. Everything changed. The rest of the scales fell from my eyes. And I thought, you know what? This country is now communist. I don't know how you declare it not being so, because you cannot hold people without due process for something that you can't hold people without due process. Period. End of discussion. That was one of the things the founders put in the Constitution, because in England, it happened all the time. If so-and-so in a district didn't like somebody, they'd just throw them in jail. That's the way they dealt with everything. So the reason why we had due process in this country was because our founders saw what that could be, what could happen with that, and how bastardized it could become, and how unjust it could become, because it always ended up then defaulting to who was in power and who liked power and didn't like the people that were around them. Absolutely. And you know what? Now we're seeing the exact same thing here, and we saw it on January 6th, and there are still people in jail that have not even had a trial yet.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, Janelle, maybe you ought to explain due process.
To the judge.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, you're innocent until proven guilty. It's as simple as that. And that's not what we're seeing across America. I tell people all the time, it's like, it's really difficult when I hear, a lot of the political phrases that people use, and you've got, our pledge and songs and all of these patriotic things. It's really difficult to hear that now.
Yep.
Because you're realizing that you're saying something out of your mouth that actually isn't true anymore.
Right.
And you're realizing that we are not free.
We are
not even close to being free in this country. And we're actually hanging on to what we have pretty much by a thread, at this point. But seeing how many people don't realize that they're not free, I think probably is the most frightening part.
It is. Well, our government has hired half of our population. So
right.
They've got that going for them, because people are thinking, oh no, I won't get, and they eliminated the possibilities that private companies can still do retirement and all of that stuff, because private companies can barely afford to do that anymore. It's just the government jobs that get to offer that. So it's already such a racket.
No, and That's so true, Julie. I mean, absolutely. But I think the other thing that I was going to say was I think people don't know what freedom is anymore. I think people think that because we can have our own home and we're not in a jail cell, because I think that's what people think freedom is. Well, I'm not in jail.
Yeah.
And it's like a super low bar.
Yeah.
That's like your lowest bar.
Yeah.
They take probably 2/3 of everything that we our work product and keep it for government, this or that.
Yeah.
And that was the point. Yes, you made my point. Exactly. Because as much as we're taxed, that prevents us from being free. When the government takes what we make and uses it toward their own ends, and we don't have that ability to use that.
They use it to work against us, not for us.
Yeah.
Against us.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? That's another good point too, because I've already brought up the lawsuit, the Stillwater lawsuit. So who was the attorney that came? Julia loves this one. Who were the attorneys who fought our case? They were employed by the school. Who pays for the school?
We did.
Exactly.
Right? So it's taxpayers fighting taxpayers to get the school to do the right thing. That's not freedom.
No. Nope. As Julia said, that sounds like a racket. The system is being set against you on purpose. If that was ever a truer statement, it is definitely happening now.
Yeah.
Well, I want to have you have time to talk about what you guys are doing next and your nonprofit.
Yes. And if anybody wants to, now one of the people that we're working with does have a nonprofit. We're going to be talking about that more, as time goes by. But we're actually we're a for-profit organization, and what we're doing though is because we do have a business side, and then we have the creative side where we do everything else. If people want to see the Saving Clayton documentary, they can reach out to us. On our website, they can reach out to us through social media. They can reach out to us through email. It's whatever works best for them. We are still doing showings for Saving Clayton if people want to see it. We've had small groups. We've had larger groups. We've had different things. We're willing to come and talk about that documentary in whatever location that you're in. We want to do that. And it's also available there on our website, redrivercreativemedia.com as well. Something that we are working on though right now is a documentary that is about detransitioners. And what's going to be really unique, because obviously the issue of gender ideology and transgenderism is not, it's not some new hot button issue. It's been going on for a while. But what's going to make this particular documentary special is that all of the stories that we are covering are going to be people that are living right here in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
We have 3 detransitioners from 3 different areas. And then we've got parents of trans kids that are coming forward to talk about their story. We have the psychological aspect of it that will be speaking into it. We have some lawmakers that will speak into it. Now, one of the things that I have stated many times about this particular project is that I don't want this particular project to have very strong political tones in it. And the reason why is because I tell people all the time, I am a storyteller before my politics and everything else.
Yeah.
It's what I do. And we've sat in rooms with people that are the polar opposite of what we are, whether it's religious beliefs or political beliefs. I mean, we've sat in rooms with people that absolutely, would disagree with us on probably every other point of life, but sitting and discussing their story and what's happened to them is really powerful when you're able to do that. And so that's kind of what we've been doing with this project. But I didn't want it to have a political tone to it, because I believe that their stories should stand alone. And one of the things that I've stated as well, and it may be considered controversial for some people, but I feel that right now in our nation that the issue of transgenderism, whether it's you're trans or you've detransitioned, has become so political that the story's been kind of lost as to what people have actually gone through. And I don't like the fact that when they are trans, they're the darling of the left. And then when they detransition, they become the darling of the right.
Exactly.
And
Oh, yeah.
I don't really like that, because their story is just sitting there in the middle and it gets lost as to
Yeah.
what they've gone through. And that's what we wanted to do with this. We wanted to be able to sit down and talk with people about what's happened to them. We want it to be raw. We want it to be real. People that, you know, and mind you, this is not a situation where everyone that has participated so far in this documentary, that it's like, oh, well, they're all from Tulsa, or they're all from these, like, the super liberal meccas of Oklahoma. Like, that's not what happened here. A lot of these parents came from very small areas of Oklahoma.
Really?
Yes. And they had been living, basically suffering in silence with these things happening to their children. And no one even knew. And they had no support system. They had no idea what was happening to their child. They had no idea what was happening to their family. And so it's been a really cool experience, because we've watched people find each other in this and been able to get support amongst each other and sharing their story and feeling like this is the first time that I'm able to talk about this, you know, to anybody. So it's been really neat to watch that. We have started filming actually this past weekend. We're going to be filming in about 2 weeks, and then we're going to be filming probably into October as well. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. But really, the main purpose of this is that we want to expose the myth, because I've been told this many times, exposing the myth that gender ideology is not affecting rural America.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not true at all.
Because it's totally affecting rural America. And most of the people that we've talked to that are detransitioners here, it's not like they decided to do this 3 years ago and then detransition. Some of these people were living in their trans identity as far back as 2009 and 2010. Like, these are people that went through a long period of living this lifestyle and then spending 4 or 5 years, you know, getting their life back. So they're all going to be really unique stories, but all the participants of this documentary are all Oklahoma. And so I feel like that it's going to help to put Oklahoma on the map as far as getting what the raw reality is for these people. Not only that, but I think it's going to draw other detransitioners out of the dark. I believe that it's going to also draw other parents that have dealt with this and not known what to do. I believe it's going to hopefully open the door to a support system that we can help create for parents and for trans people, but also for detrans people as well. Because many of the people that detransition, I like to say this, there was a trans activist, I cannot remember his name. He said this probably about 3 or 4 years ago and said that, well, the reason why the suicide rate is so high amongst trans people is because they're not being accepted by society. And I remember in my research, I've been researching detransitioners for probably the past 5 years, you know, diving into their stories, following some of them from day one, you know, of detransition, and days where I just had tears rolling because of the amount of pain that these people had gone through. And I realized the reason why the suicide rate is so high is because they are completely rejected and abandoned by the same community that uplifted them while they were trans. And then when the honeymoon phase is over,
Oh, yeah.
they are just like, it's like total isolation. They're not only dealing with what they've done to their bodies, which is very difficult, but they're also dealing with all of the traumas and the mental issues and all of the different things that are unresolved, that were not dealt with by medical doctors, that were not dealt with by psychologists or therapists. All of it is like a culmination of just trauma on top of them, and they can't withstand it. And many of them do end up killing themselves. And so there's so much we want to explore.
Sad.
Yeah, there's a lot that we want to explore. We really want to show the raw reality of this, but I'm super excited because, again, it's like this is an Oklahoma project. I'm so thankful that God has allowed us to do this, because I feel like that we're able to give Oklahomans a voice by doing these documentaries. I mean, we have a lot of new projects that are in the works that we haven't even gotten into yet, but all of it always comes down to Oklahoma and the constituents that have stories here. We're building also what we call kind of a digital dossier of DHS cases as well, to basically record people's stories.
Yeah.
For future use, whatever that looks like. We know that going up against DHS it's not going to take one person, it's going to take an army. So that's playing our part. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I've been doing while you were talking, because I think I want people to hear what you're saying, and so I want to use a picture as a way to do that. I think the detransitioning issue is huge, but I think, Julie and I and our organization has been very concerned about the types of books, that we're finding in libraries, and about the fact that, there are gay and lesbian clubs on the campus. And there's just a lot of bombarding children,
yes,
with sexuality issues. And so I wanted to show, hopefully this is, you can actually see this.
Yes.
You were talking about the fact that that this is happening in small rural counties and cities in Oklahoma. And when we were looking up something about drag queens performing for young children, which is obviously something we're not okay with.
Yes.
And when I was researching this, I was actually researching, because it happens through a lot of these pride organizations, and the whatever I just said that I can't think of what I'm talking about now. So what happens when you in the morning, and I've only had one cup of coffee at drag queens. Thank you. So there actually is something called the Rural Oklahoma Pride, which is just shocking to me. And you have one in Cotton County, Garvin County, Pontotoc County, Stevens County, Muskogee County chapters. So this, to me, this is pernicious. And they're going after children. And this is not okay, but this is how it's getting out into the rural country. They're actually connecting, and I didn't put the slide in here, but I'll do it in another time. They actually call themselves covens.
Yeah, seems appropriate.
So it's like you get two things in one. You get the devil worship and the transgenderism at the same time. And I just don't think people know how pernicious this is and where this is going. And, I think I'm very excited to see, the documentary. And
yeah, it's going to be good.
And quite frankly, the whole movement, or whatever you want to call it, the whole pride movement. I mean, pride is like the opposite of what you're supposed to do as a Christian. Trying to chop up your body so that it isn't what God created you to be. That is obviously anti-Christian. And for churches to either sit silent or even sometimes endorse
Yes.
Very,
And there are many here in Oklahoma that are endorsing it.
very satanic ideology is just, churches need to repent. People need to get saved.
And we're not saying people don't struggle with mental issues. I mean, one of my very favorite authors of all time, T.H. White, who wrote the Sword in the Stone, which was, he did a whole series about King Arthur. And, he fought the tendency to be gay, but he ended up moving out into the country because he was a Christian and he didn't want to, and he couldn't figure out how to deal with that feeling, but he didn't want to inflict that on anybody else. So he moved away from everybody, so he didn't have to struggle with that. And it's not to say that people don't struggle with that and that they don't need our love and understanding and help, but they don't need us to okay that, because that's not love, okaying a behavior that is harmful psychologically or physically. And I don't understand why Christians can't understand that. I mean, you wouldn't tell your kid go play in traffic because you didn't want to, you wanted to suppress the happiness of your child because they wanted to go play in traffic.
Exactly. It's like, that's not how it's applied in pretty much anything else, that we do on a day-to-day basis. And so I do hope that this will help us to have a conversation about how are we, I love what one person said that's involved in this. And they said, at some point, these people they're gonna come out of this. And when they do, who is going to be available to affirm their true identity? Who's going to be available to help them through this trauma? And it's no different than the gay community as well. You have people that are struggling and they don't know how to get out of it. And how do we walk alongside people until they move into freedom? Like, how do we do that? You know what I mean? How do we offer them, like, we're not condoning your behavior 1000%, but there are people that are seeking out help and they're trying to figure out how to do that, what that looks like. So, yeah.
So before we're getting long, because it's an hour and 3 minutes. I know, people have a certain amount of time, but one of the things, I had just pulled it in and then I accidentally took it out. One of the things I kind of want to end on is you had one of the most beautiful. Do you still do the story of Nell at all? I mean, how does that work?
It's been interesting. I stopped doing it because at the time, I didn't have the time because we were still doing the daily content and all that was going on. So now that we're not doing that any longer, I do plan to continue on with the story of Nell. And to be perfectly honest, it's actually like our favorite. Like it's my husband's favorite. It's my favorite. We love it because we get to tap into the creative parts that we really love. That's not connected to political things. It's not connected to anything. It's just nature and it's sound and imagery, and it's some of it's the word of God, and some of it's poetic, and this is more of my creativity. My husband.
So can I play just a little bit of this video?
Yeah, I like this one actually.
Oh, this is so beautiful. I can't make it full screen, darn it. Let me see if I can figure it out.
A few days ago, my husband found something I never expected to be found. A special book that belongs to me. Not just any book. A Bible. And not just any Bible. My first Bible. I sat down and I could feel the dust upon my fingertips as I ran across an inscription on the cover. My name. I had to have been around age 8 or 9 when I received it. And in that moment, I felt identified yet again. Once again, the founding place of my love for words and the maker of all things conjoined. I felt as if the past, my present, and my future were aligning in that moment. What a beautiful thing. Identity. Being created unlike anyone else on earth. Branded by his love. Branded by his creativity. Marked for greatness. May you be identified, my friend. You formed my innermost being, shaping my delicate inside and my intricate outside, and wove them all together in my mother's womb. Psalm 139:13. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. And I appointed you as a spokesman to the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. Furthermore, because we are united with Christ, we have received an inheritance from God, for he chose us in advance, and he makes everything work out according to his plan. Ephesians 1:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. Ephesians 1:5.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Well, now I want to go do videos again.
Honestly, and think about this. What did you just say? I mean, we capped off this interview with exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I love the way God does these things.
I know. You know, it was interesting because out of all the things that I did, to be perfectly honest, the videos that I did with Story of Nell, they ended up being the ones that people I felt like that were encouraged by the most. And so I started creating them because I was like, God, we are living in a time where people are so hungry for peace and they're so hungry for hope
and beauty.
And exactly, they want to they want their it's like his presence in your imagination. You know what I mean? And it's like it's
Yes.
causing people's imagination to come alive. And like you said, Julia, they want to see beautiful things, hear beautiful things. And I felt like that's what this was. And so, yeah, it's funny you bring it up because my husband and I were just talking about it actually last week. What do we want to do with it? You know, incorporating my oldest daughter into it as well, because she's also, you know, all of my kids are storytellers, but she's more like her dad with the camera and, you know, has had a camera in her hands.
Very cool.
About 5. But it'll be interesting because I think that there's more there. So we do plan on doing that. Yeah.
Well, I have loved following Kevin's Facebook page where he just takes these random pictures, like wherever he is, and it tells the pictures tell the story.
Yes.
Just wow. You know,
and it's so therapeutic for him as well. He loves it. And that's actually one thing we're going to have available on our website as well. Some of the prints, some of the photos that he's taking across Oklahoma, those will be available for people to buy as well and be framed. And there's a lot he hasn't put on there. He's never put on there because he's like, you know, that'll be just one of his series. But it's been really neat. God's used all of these giftings, and hopefully it's going to all be used for his glory. But yeah.
Well, Janelle, thank you. Oh, and I almost forgot. We're working. You and I and your husband are working on a project together too.
We are. Yes, we are. That's coming out very soon.
We hope to get that off by October. Last time I talked to your husband, we were hoping October. So, but you've helped me with the dark money research that I've done. So we'll have some video on that. So, and I've really been so grateful to you guys for that. So, please, I'm going to see if I can't pop in your, I want to pop in your website before we go so you can have one more time to, talk about your website.
Yeah, you can go to redrivercreativemedia.com. That's where you'll find Saving Clayton. You will also find all of the prints that we're going to be getting up very soon. You can contact us from there. There's a spot for you to do that under Contact Us. You can find us also under Red River Creative Media on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can find myself, Janelle Batts, or my husband, Kevin Batts, on Facebook as well. Lots of ways to contact us, but those are the main ways. I really appreciate both of you ladies. I want Oklahoma to know the people that they have fighting for them, they may not deserve. Because you guys have been in the trenches for a long time. And been in the trenches.
What are you saying?
I'm not saying, hey, you still look good for how long you've been in those trenches is all I gotta say, okay? But you guys have been in the trenches fighting when I feel that the constituents of Oklahoma probably didn't deserve it. If that's the best way of putting it. You guys have fought for people that have not wanted to listen. You guys have fought for people that have not wanted to hear the truth. You have remained on the wall for a long time. And I hope that the people of Oklahoma realize this very soon, that they've had fighters in their corner, whether it be seen or unseen, for years. And if we didn't have people like you, and we didn't have people like you, Julia, and you, Jenny, I honestly, I don't even know if we would still have the freedoms that we have even right now, as little as they may be. But I appreciate both of you. I really do.
Wow. Thank you.
Blessed.
Yeah. And the best thing about all three of us, though, is that we love Jesus and we like to listen to him and we try to do what he asks us to do. And that's kind of the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Janelle, God love you. Thank you so much for coming on. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you ever, because we are happy to do that. Absolutely. And thank you so much for being on with us. And we will talk to you very soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye. Boy, that was fun. She is the most awesomest, and she's gorgeous. I mean, on top of that. So she's gorgeous and amazing.
Yes, and so smart, and doesn't get confused about where this is headed, even when it looks like chaos that she's approaching, which is, it's rare anymore that people don't get confused. So,
well, and you know, she and her husband are such just a godly model of family, and, you know, raising three children. We didn't even talk about the fact that she homeschools all of them. And, I mean, she's just that, you know, they are definitely an Oklahoma power couple, and they're an Oklahoma power couple for Jesus and under the cover of Jesus. So we should all be very grateful to them for that. So,
you know, there was a time, we didn't even get to talk about this. There was a time when I was a sidewalk advocate in front of Planned Parenthood, and they had abortion days and they had trans days. And I will say, when we were out there and it was the trans days, they were more than happy to come over and talk about Jesus with us.
Oh, really?
Happy. Yeah. The women that were there for abortion were more likely to duck and you know, try not to look at us. The trans were very open to coming over and hearing the gospel. And I'm like, they are seeking They are seeking Jesus.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was just one of the things that I thought of that I didn't jump in and interrupt to say. But we need to be practicing preaching the gospel and sharing the love of Christ.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, if you're a believer, you believe that there's a hole in our hearts, in our souls that only God can fill. And when we don't have God filling that soul, then we try to stick something else in there, and that can be drug abuse or sexual abuse or, whatever that could be. And that's not a popular, opinion. But, and think what you want, but, that's what we think. So we believe that Jesus is the answer is the solution to all problems.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Who do we have coming up for next week? Do you remember?
Let me see. I can look. Denise Roberts and Linda Murphy.
Oh,
So,
good.
Yeah, we've got some people that have been around battling this as long as we have. My favorite picture of Denise is when we're outside the Glenn Beck Studios when he had us all come in 2014. And wasn't it 2014 or 13?
I think it was 2014. Yeah, I think so.
So, there we were all together. And Denise was my roommate for that excursion. Got to enjoy that company. She's a sweetheart. And then Linda Murphy, of course, she's got a lot more years in this battle than we do, but got to work alongside her in the battle against Common Core for that entire fight. So
right.
That was, and she's got more stuff going on now as well. So she's all over the place and involved in a lot of things. I can't wait to talk to her again. When we talk on the phone, it's usually 2 hours. So I haven't talked to her lately because I haven't had a 2-hour window to call and catch up. So
that's usually what happens when you talk to your friends. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to having her on and we can get all caught up together. It may be long.
Well, good. That'll be great. So we're looking forward to that. And we're actually going to, or I'm going to pull in our new video to close out our video for today. And I hope you enjoy it. And, please, if you enjoy what we do, go to our website. You can see it in the crawl, rope2.org/donate. And we also have a Patreon account. And you just need to go to patreon.com and look up Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment. And we'll have some new things to be putting up there. We do have some things up there right now, but we're going to be doing some interviews that won't be on our unpaid socials. They'll only be on Patreon. So if you want to see that, we just suggest an $8 a month subscription. So if you can do that, please log on and share that. And so we will see you again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks for joining us.